Welcome to the Modco podcast. Conversations about life, organization, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. This show was created to provide motivation, inspiration, and a reminder to give yourself grace. Here, we are transparent, non judgmental, authentic, and love to have fun because sometimes you need to laugh at yourself. I'm your host, Angel. Sit back and get ready for valuable tips, resources, laughs, and more. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if you've been hanging around for a while, welcome back. And I hope you brought a friend.
Welcome to another awesome and exciting episode of the Marco podcast. Be sure to grab some food and drinks and just chillax.
Today, we are talking about fear. But before we get into talking about fear, first, I want to talk about daylight savings time because daylight savings is kicking my behind. I am tired. I have no energy, and all I want to do is sleep all day. If you are listening to this from an area that does not have daylight savings time, I am super jealous of you because your whole body and time frame is not thrown off. Mine is just a mess right now. The only good thing that has came out of this is that I can now drink caffeine after 2 p.m. because prior to the time changing, if I would drink caffeine after 2 o'clock, which was pushing it, maybe even 1 o'clock, I would be up until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So I had to cut out my afternoon caffeine, and I needed that afternoon caffeine before I went to work. So daylight savings time has allowed me to up my caffeine intake again. But other than that, I think I'd much rather have this hour back because this is ridiculous. And then on top of that, we got to deal with the pollen too. Those two things just should not come together. Pollen and daylight savings time should not, they shouldn't be anywhere near each other. I don't like either one of them, and I want both of them to go away. So if anyone else is out there struggling with either the daylight savings time or the pollen, I feel your pain. We're in this together. Hopefully, the pollen will go away soon. Unfortunately, daylight savings time is here until October, November. So at least we can get rid of one of them within the next couple of weeks here. All right, so let's dive into today's episode, fear. Fear has a way of keeping us stuck. That can be fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough, fear of not being taken seriously enough, fear of putting yourself out there. Anything that you have a fear of that's holding you back from living your best life or holding you back from doing something that you really want to do or that you really want to try. It's fear and it has you stuck. In my book, Fear and Forgiveness, I talk about how fear is not something that we experience, but rather something we have to confront and work our way through. I have a fear of rejection and a fear of not being good enough. I was rejected from every sports team that I tried out for in middle and high school. So that kind of put a little fear in me of trying out for things or going after things where you had to be accepted into it. My fear of not being good enough, this is a story with a little bit of a background to it that I also talk about in my book, but I'm going to share it on today's episode. That fear came when I was 8 years old in the second grade. So we're going to rewind about 31 years here. Can't believe that I'm saying we're rewinding 31 years, but that's where we're going. And we are going to go back to 8-year-old Angel sitting on the floor in her second grade classroom. I have also came to realize that this may be where my fear of math came from and my dislike of math came from as well. And you'll see what I'm talking about when I get into the story, because as you all know, me and math, we're not vibing. I think I might take the pollen over the math. But so second grade, 8 years old, I was sitting in my classroom. We were sitting in a circle on the floor going over math problems. And this girl who I thought was my friend, she raised her hand. She got the problem wrong. The teacher told her, no, that's not the correct answer. Who else wants to try? So I raised my hand and she called on me, got the answer correct. We're getting ready to move on to the next question. The so-called friend starts crying, not just like whining crying, but hard down, ugly, tears dripping all down her face, crying. Teacher stops a lesson and she says, "What's wrong? Are you okay? What happened?" And she said, "Angel got the question right." And she said, "Okay." And she said, "Well, Angel's stupid and I'm smart. So I don't understand how someone as stupid as Angel could get it right when someone as smart as me got it wrong." In that moment, my heart dropped. The fear of not being good enough was introduced to me. And I started second guessing everything, even that moment, sitting there in that circle, knowing that I had just got the answer right. I literally started second guessing whether or not I had gotten it right. I was like, well, am I stupid? How did I get that right? Like, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have got it right because if I'm stupid, there's no way that I should have gotten that question right. And from that moment on, I second guessed everything I did or said. I always had a fear that people would realize how stupid I was. And that fear held me back from doing a lot of things. I'm not going to lie, I still have that fear of not being good enough. I still have that fear of rejection from time to time. It pops up in my mind, in my head. I'm human. And just because you work through something, that doesn't mean that it does not pop back up at times. It just means that you know how to handle it better when it does pop up. When I started this podcast, I had a fear of rejection of the podcast, a fear of not being good enough for the podcast, a fear that no one would listen, that I would get negative reviews, or that people would think that I was stupid and that the show would just fail. But then I realized, what if I don't fail? What if people do listen to me? What if I do get positive reviews? And what if I finally realize that I'm not stupid? I think that as someone who has a fear of rejection, I think that a lot of pressure is put on people that you have to get it right the first try. That if you don't get it right the first try, that's it. You're done for it. Instead of, okay, I didn't get it right this time. What can I do differently to try to get it right the next time or to improve it? And I remember in middle school and high school, the quote, "failure is not an option," was plastered everywhere. You would definitely hear it a lot from those who played sports, but you would see the posters everywhere as well. And at that age, middle school, high school, you're pretty much taking everything literally. So you're seeing the words "failure is not an option." And for me personally, I thought that meant if I failed, like that was it. I was done. I had let everyone down and there was no coming back from failing. But what should have been explained about this quote is that it was not meant to be a negative. It was supposed to be an inspiration. The quote was supposed to motivate you to face your challenges. It would have been really nice of them to share this with us instead of making us feel bad about it. Failure is not losing, it's gaining experience. It's not the end, it's a redirection. Nobody gets anything right on the first time. And if you do, like, kudos to you. That's awesome. I know I don't get stuff right on the first time. It takes many, many tries. And even after doing something a lot of times, you may still mess it up. You may still not get it 100% right. There are plenty of things that I do like every day and I'm like, oops, and I'll go to do it the next day and I'm like, oh, I messed that up, or oh, I didn't do that right. It happens. You just have to learn how to pivot and redirect yourself. And we all have things that we want to accomplish, but we don't try them out of fear, whatever that fear is that's holding us back. But do it scared. Like I said, trial and error, it's a part of life. And you're just not gonna always get it right the first time that you do it. If you fail, brush yourself off, figure out where you went wrong or what went wrong, and then try it again. And also stop and think about what it is that you're really afraid of. What is the fear that is holding you back? And then once you figure out what it is that's holding you back, figure out a way that you can move past that to keep going after what it is that you want. Don't let the fear of failing stop you from trying because you'll never get anywhere if every time something fails, you start it over again. All right, I will talk to you all next time. Have a good one. Are you loving the Modco podcast? Head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star rating and review. This helps others to find the show and gets the show listed in the recommendation section. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode and that you're able to gain something from it. Talk to you next time. Thank you to Chris Leonard for the music for this week's episode.